good member of society or to be a good family means hiding a lot of what really goes on. You see a lot of families today, they posture as perfect families, but inside there's so much rot and there's so much disturbance, you know. It's again part of the social pressure for us to all be perfect and portray ourselves to be perfect. I think in Eastern societies, it's much more. You know, we hide our bad marriages, we hide our violence, we hide our rape, we hide everything. And yes, I think the culture is much more, let it be, you know, we'll figure it out, whatever. But I think even today, families are not armed with the language as to how they can speak to their child and also what to do. So for example, the first thought would be like, how dare they and what the hell, and let me take that up and let me file a police complaint and let me get you counseling. Like these are the most obvious things to say, and perhaps I hope now things will change for some families at least, and this would happen. But you know, and firstly, you know, it's so sad that, I mean, this happens so much, and you know, I'm so sorry for you, and it's really brave of you to come up here and share this with us. And you're absolutely right. It makes you so angry when people say it's part of our culture, right? It's not part of our culture. It's part of societal framing and societal pressure on women to be a certain way, and therefore we have to conform, and therefore we have to not say a word. Why do you think the numbers when you talk about sexual violence in families is so high, 80%? But they don't go to jail. They're not taken to jail. Nobody takes them to jail. Nobody barely. I mean, you don't even hear of people ostracizing them. You know. So this has just become part of, like, be good like a girl. Don't say a thing like a girl. Like, you know, it's all this pressure put on women, and it's a horrific standard we have held ourselves up to. We need to change and break that cycle. And it's great that you've been able to do it.
Yeah, and I would add that to your question of how do we talk about this with traditional families. I spent 18 years trying to talk to my traditional family about this, and I was not successful from within. But as soon as I sort of found my inner hero, right, and you were a hero, you are a hero, you showed up as a hero when you said that, and we all have our inner heroes, and we, you know, decide when and where that hero is going to show up. I think when I finally connected with that part of me, where I gave myself permission to fight, and I gave myself permission to really accept the wrongs that had been done to me, it enabled me to advocate in a very different way. It enabled me to do the things I do today. And the same family that didn't understand and wanted me to be like a girl, submissive, subservient, and quiet, today is slowly beginning to see the girl who's fighting and advocating for others. And it has shifted within my family. It's a remarkable journey, and it's a tough one, but I think that would be one response, is that each of us can advocate. Yeah. And I think advocacy starts in the home. It starts in the home. It starts with our family members and our elders, and they're all very well-intentioned, and they all mean well for us, but it's a question of language, right? It's a question of what are they saying and why are they saying it, and what is it informed by? And sometimes we have to leave the safety of that family in order to find the right language with which to advocate. And so I think that can be very effective. I mean, there are different models in Africa that have been very effective with, you know, all kinds of different harmful practices, where when that advocacy starts at home and you find the right language with which to frame it, where it's not defensive, we're not making anyone feel criticized or judged, you can really shift the needle. You can really move that in a very powerful way.
I also want to say that I find that when people are in an economically weak position, women especially, if they don't work and they don't have an independent income, it's twice as hard for them to take a stand to support a victim of violence in the family, because they're dependent on either their husband or the person who's committed the act of violence, and it's very tough for them. And actually, you know, when people say that why don't educated women walk out of marriages, it's not that easy. Like this pressure on women to be able to take the stand and the onus for everything is really crappy. Like, why aren't you just taking care of the men who do this, right? Like, it's just...
Right. And it's never that simple of like, why didn't you just leave? You know? Yeah. Like if one more person asked me, why didn't you just leave, Vidya? You seem terribly empowered. Yeah. Well, thanks, but you know, it's not that simple. It's not, you don't just open a door and walk, right? So,
And it can happen again and again. And even if you didn't leave again and again and again, it doesn't mean you're at fault. Like, it's the fault of the rapist.
absolutely. Thank you for that. Other thoughts, questions? Yes. We'd love to hear you.
I think your book is going to be important because it's starting conversations. You talk to Aradhana and Ariana. It will go beyond them because they will talk to their friends about it. So they're in a safe family environment. They have people that are supportive, but not all children are in that
Yes.
situation. So you've empowered them by saying it's not all right, it's not you, you're not wrong, and you have to tell. You can't keep the quiet. In the United States, I guess worldwide right now, we're talking about the abuse of priests, Catholic,
Yes.
people in authority. And I think that that's what happens over and over again. It's people of power, people of authority. Women have been second-class citizens. In the United States, we've only been allowed to vote for 100 years. So it put them in that secondary position, that lower position. And it's only as strong women have come out and fought these examples, I can't wait to read about them, that it will grow. That people will say it's not okay, we're not being quiet. You may be a person of authority, but you did wrong by me. So I think that your book is going to be a really important first step. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Just to add to that, white women in the United States have been allowed to vote for years, but not all people. So it's not just,
Oh, yeah.
sex differences, but class differences and race differences and all that. So I don't know if that's the same in India, but just adding that.
Thank you.
And thank you for your book. It was
Thank you.
interesting.
Other thoughts that you'd like to share? Other questions? Yeah.
Thank you, Vidya and Aparna. It's been very enriching sharing. Aparna, when you're doing this book, you have gone through a series of, like, from Jhansi Lakshmibai until Deepa Karmakar. It's a range of women and the personalities. Was there anything that struck you that across these that is very critical for the women of?
Was there a thread? Was there a thread?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, somebody asked me this question in my last event, like, what inspired you to write this book? And I said, nothing inspired me to write this book. I was really pissed off. I was pissed off with myself that I hadn't done something like this earlier. I was pissed off that we were putting our children in a little cocoon and wrapping it up with a white ribbon. And I was pissed off that these things were happening around us and we were like, I think it's too early to talk to them about it. I was pissed off that people who we were ignoring and we were marginalizing are actually our heroes. And really, I think it was, so when I approached this book, I had got my niece is going to come up soon. I had got my niece this book called Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls, which I'm sure a lot of you know, it's this 1 million copy bestseller, etc. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is sweet. And, why don't we have enough Indian women here, blah, blah, blah. Let's do one on India. It just started off with that thought. But when we actually sat with Oxfam and we made a list of our real heroes, I was just thinking of, like, we were making a list and I was thinking of their stories while we were mentally making a list. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be tough. And I was like, look, these stories are hard. And they were like, that's your problem. And I was like, all right. But and I was thinking to myself, I cannot write this book for very young children. I have to write it for a certain age group. And then when I started, so I read 63 books because some people had passed on. I interviewed, I don't know how many. No, I read 30 something books and I interviewed 63 people. And it took me about 6 months to do this entire thing. I had put my life on hold. This is all I did for 6 months. Bhavri Devi, when I went to meet her, I cried for 2 days. I didn't sleep for 2 days. Soni Sori, when I spoke to her, I cried like, even my uncle. So she was speaking in Hindi and the phone connection was really bad. And I made my uncle listen to the transcript. And he was like, when he finished translating it, he was like, my God, this is so sad. And I was like, yeah, this is what I've been doing for the past 7 months. Like, it's really nice that you come to know that this is sad. Like, this is what goes on. I think we tend to forget that this is the reality. Shiny and happy is a very small percentage. And that's what struck me in all these stories, even the inspirational stories, like even the sportswomen. They've come from very difficult backgrounds and they've stood up for themselves and they've overcome all odds. Everybody has been brave and fearless and persistent, and that has been the common thread. So I think that's what it is.
Yeah, and it's about what do we teach our children and when do we teach it to them, right? I mean, I have an 18-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old son, and life is about the difficulties and the challenges, right? Much more so than when everything went great. Like, who doesn't want everything to go great, right? That's awesome. But what do you do when you fall off the horse, right? What do you do when that wall hits you? What do you do when you want to take a next step and you have no idea how you're going to take it? These stories really speak to that in a very simple way. It really speaks to how to overcome and how to persist and how to prevail and how to just fight and show up, right? And I think that's really difficult to teach children depending on what context they're in. Some of us are in very suburban contexts, right? And there's a lot of things that are just handed to the children, right? And I mean, urban, suburban, doesn't matter. But I think sometimes children get lost in a bubble. They get lost in a cocoon. That's part of what probably pissed you off, is this stuff is going on all around us in every country in the world. And most people don't want to talk about it because it's awkward and it's kind of uncomfortable and, oh, I don't know the right language, and maybe it's not appropriate. Isn't that a great word? It's not appropriate. It's not really relevant, to my child's development. So yes, these are all personal value judgments and statements that we all have to make for ourselves, but it is about sort of falling down and learning how to get up effectively, right? And really learning from that and moving on. Like Ritu Dalmia, right? She says, like, that's her greatest strength is, Ritu is one of the stories in the book, the chef, right, who opens restaurants in Milan. She says, I think my greatest strength is the fact that I know how to learn from failure and I know how to get up and move on. And it might seem really simple and obvious, but I think it's really hard to execute in our day-to-day. Like, we can all aspire to this and say, yes, and I'm a fighter, and of course I'm going to, rebound. But do we really know how to do that? Do we really have the skills to advocate for ourselves, to show up for ourselves as heroes in our own lives, let alone show up for someone else? I think there's a real skill set around that. And I think that these stories really demonstrate and exemplify that skill set. And so it's like a little toolkit, for those who read it, young adults. I think that they're going to walk away with some new tools in their belt. Yeah. Other thoughts, questions?
Amit?
First of all, thank you so much for coming here. But beyond that, I also want to touch upon the stories of our immigrant aunties who have come here, like my mom and our moms. They all came here, many of them with nothing, with $8 in their pocket. And
my dad came with 7.
Yes. They came here from privilege or non-privilege or wherever they came from. They kept the family structure going. They're the true heroes. And I look at my mom and what she did, coming from an old established family in Jaipur, where no meat, onions, garlic, nothing of that nature. She actually worked at a fish factory. My dad worked, she maintained the family, and they're our true heroes. But she was also the first person to ever work a day in her life, and day in the family. I mean, old landed gentry, but she went out, got her master's in sociology, and she did it in India. So the coolest thing is a 5-year-old is going through the cantonment and all the military soldiers saying like this to your mom. It's the coolest thing.
That's amazing.
But the thing was interesting. She just met another auntie, Mitra auntie, love you. Mitra auntie, when my mom went to school in 1950s in Mahani College in Jaipur. So Rajasthan, as you mentioned. And in Rajasthan, when Gayatri Devi established the college, they had to push the women to come out and go to school. So my mom was one of the few. So would you imagine, just 2 weeks ago at India Day, my mom, I met Mitra auntie, and she's like, wait a minute, you're so-and-so's son, Rajkumari's son, right? I said, yes, auntie. Tell her that Mitra says hello. And they just got a reunion a few days ago when I was helping in a campaign, and the two of them back to square one. both studied sociology. So yeah, the power of the aunties.
It's very real. It's very real, and it's in every country. I think these, immigrant experiences, and I mean, my grandmother came with me here when I was a baby and wore a very traditional sari that's tied sort of like a pant. She shoveled the snow in that. She rode the New York City public bus in that. Wow. She took me to school, and I mean, talk about identity. Like, talk about a woman who knew who she was. And this is someone who didn't really go to school and was widowed at like 18 and had 5 children. And, yes, I mean, those are the women that we're standing on their shoulders.
Absolutely.
And we're really lucky and fortunate and grateful to have learned from that kind of foundation, that kind of determination, right? And a lot of that, again, is in this book. A lot of that kind of grit and just, I'm going to get this done no matter what. Even if nobody believes in me. Like, that came through for me in all the stories, it wasn't about what someone else thought. It was always anchored in this very personal place of power that we all have. And I think sometimes we forget it's there. Sometimes we don't remember to connect with it, but it's always there. And all these women have that personal seat of power, very centered in them. And boy, do they use it. Do they leverage it? Do they just conquer their worlds with it? So.
Go ahead, yeah.
Please.
I'm hopeful but skeptical about can you explain more about the 377 Act? Because I thought it had passed before and then was repealed.
Yeah, it was repealed.
Okay, so can you explain?
So it's an old archaic British law, which was passed when they were in the country. And then there was this movement to do away with it. So the way law works is that you have a judge, then to overturn that appeal, you have a 3-bench judge, then you have a 5-bench judge, like to keep going on this process. So a couple of years ago, it came back into play big time. And everybody, all of us, the whole world, like, who's been fighting against this law to be repealed. What it does basically is any act of sodomy or unnatural sex is illegal, all right? Unnatural sex, I don't know, there's kids in the room, I can't even talk. Unnatural could even mean heterosexual sex in different ways, okay, which is not normal sex. So I think all of us were criminals in many ways, okay? All of us were considered criminals in many ways, all right? So what happened was that, this activism started at a very grassroots level. So we started to see pride parades. Like I told you, the Hijra community, I think, is iconic in India because they really changed our view towards how we view transgender people. But then there was this pride parade started. Like, there was a little bit of aping of the West, like we have a pride parade. And in big cities, we started the pride parades and people would go out in solidarity. We would all just go out and hang out. I have a cousin who's LGBTQ and we always went out just to support her, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have these great lawyers like Menaka Guruswamy, and there were 5 lawyers in court who went and represented this case, and they spoke to. Now, we happened to have these 5 judges at this point of time who are very progressive, all right? And given the current judicial system, it's incredible because most of the judges are completely right-wing and like they're very traditionally steeped in drinking cow urine or whatever it is, right? So these judges apparently, and I was talking to Menaka, had come over the other day, I was talking to her about it, and she was like, it's incredible, they quote Leonard Cohen, and like they've got all these great reference points, etc., etc. And so she said that when this case was made, it was made like 3 weeks ago in court, and the judgment was pronounced 2 days ago. Can a 7-bench judge court overturn it? Yes, they can. It can happen, but will it happen? We don't think so. It would be really foolhardy of the government now to say that, hey, no, we don't support this, we want another committee on it, blah, 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 because it's gone through such a process, and it's one small little win, okay? They've got a bigger agenda playing in the background, all right? So will it happen if we become a completely Hindutva country? Perhaps. But right now, I think we have to just stay with the win and be happy for it. What's going to happen in the future, we don't know. But let me tell you this. The Hijra community is still the most ostracized community in the country, and they were the ones responsible for this in many ways. We still ostracize them, and it really sucks. That's what I keep saying, that people at the grassroots levels, who are the actual people who fought for all our rights, are not getting the benefits of the fight.
Yeah, they're the real human rights defenders,
Yeah.
right? They're the real people. Anyone else?
Am I correct that the original unnatural sex came from the British?
Yes. In our country, that original law was passed by the British.
Very much a part of their.
Yes, it was sedition, very, very, not sedition, so sodomy, very much part of their law, yeah.
Just to make a comment about the hijab community, I had the honor and privilege of hosting a delegation of the community here in Boston. They first went to the White House, invited to the White House under President Obama, of course, and then after that, they'd come to Boston. These ladies were dressed in their finery, and all the saris, all the jewels, everything. And they arrived here, and we had a roundtable discussion with one of our press outlets here, and man, and I knew it back then, they are going to make this happen.
They did.
And I'm still in touch with them.
Yeah.
I believe they're going to be doing some other battles, which
Yeah.
I'm working on with them.
Yeah.
But I could not be more proud. And it was the State Department, United States, and the Indian government that brought them here. Because in India, transgender rights are legal.
Also, we recognize the third gender.
Gender, exactly.
We recognize
So
the
we're progressive
Yeah.
in one sense, and we're deficient in another, but they've somewhat balanced out, but the fight still rages. Never sleep. It's always there.
To your point, we're hopeful skeptics.
Yes.
Here too, the trans community started the Stonewall riot. They still have left right. Same thing.
Yeah, similar kind of like appropriations.
I think you've heard enough from me. My name is Amit Dikshit. I'm the Executive Director of the South Asian Arts and Cultural Council. And our aim is to create a table of understanding, bringing cultures together so that we realize we have more in common than what sets us apart. And our speaker series is that challenge. We have a challenge. We want to start conversations. And providing a platform for authors as Arpana and Vidya coming here, it is an amazing conversation. And we've taped this conversation. And we'd love to get sound points. Anyone would like to make a comment? Because I will make it my mission to make sure that this is broadcast on some major Indian networks. So that this conversation, of course, edited, of course, this conversation really gets to our girls. It's very, very, very important. And I've been a member of Masala, as some of our members here are, and it's Massachusetts Area South Asian Lambda Association. Masala. It works. So when we had India Day for the first time, we got permission to have a booth. And I remember a group of us were standing behind the sign of Masala that we quickly did the night before. And, you know, the uncles and aunties would come up and say, "So, are you a restaurant?" I said, "No, uncle, we're a LGBTQ organization." "Oh, okay. But some very good blessings, all that. You know, you'd be surprised at when you look at the low-hanging fruit, that how many people will respond and how many people will accept. You know, and that is the key. It's conversations like this and many more. In all of the last 3 series we've done, we've touched upon 377. And that is, I can't tell you how thrilled we were. Masala was, we had a little celebration party 2 days ago when it happened, and I was up till 3 o'clock in the morning waiting for the verdict. And Devdutt Patnaik was texting me, and hi Devdutt. And a lot of people that have been doing this. So we have worked very hard. In fact, in Harvard, we did the India conference at Harvard. First time, 377. You know, we had a number of people on the panel, from movie stars to Devdutt Patnaik, who was a movie star himself. And then we also had, you know, a head of FICCI, corporate. And then, you know, a member from Parliament who actually got the transgender bill done. So those conversations are very, very important. And the sound points as well. You know, but getting that transit to American mainstream LGBT, having them understand, this is India's Stonewall. You're absolutely right about that. So yes, transgender community. But I want to thank you, ladies, for coming. And I'd like to welcome anyone else. We're going to chat, and we're going to have some more clips, because we're going to be determined to get this conversation out to a large audience. And once again, thank you for coming. for the South Asian Arts and Cultural Council. Please like us on Facebook, our page, all of that, because I'm sure you're going to see wonderful images. And we'll do a live stream of this conversation again. So those who have missed it, watch on Facebook or contact me directly. We'll send you the link. It's a conversation worth having again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you.